Tonight, for the sake of the conversation, Jay will represent bigger. Bigger is better. And I will represent small is beautiful. Two paths to a sustainable economy. What we're talking about tonight is what is best for the whole, not what is best for your individual business's bottom line, but how are we truly going to achieve SVN's mission of building a just economy and a sustainable planet?
Never agree to a public debate against an absolutely drop-dead beautiful woman who has the moral high ground in the debate, a better sense of humor, and a superior intellect. And so I am officially screwed. Another thing, one of the things that keeps me awake up at night is the number 3 billion. Anybody have a guess what the number 3 billion represents? You're right, Josh. So those are the 3 billion people in the world that live on less than $2 a day. And it is not only unfeasible to address that number with the speed required through a bunch of little one-off actions, but it is arguably immoral to not be thinking about how to do things that can scale up and be replicated to serve not tens or hundreds or thousands or millions, but tens of millions of people, and fast. Because we can sit here and talk about sustainable this or green that or local this or local that, and it is not affecting that community at all. Because without Chinese scale, you got nothing. And you're never going to get solar down to a place where it's affordable enough that we're going to tip and have renewable energy representing anything remotely like the percentage of our energy consumption that we're going to need. And that isn't going to happen through distributed energy plans. That's going to happen through huge investments in solar that only significantly large bodies can do. And so if we want a sustainable economy based on lack of use of fossil fuels, et cetera, you're going to have to deal with the fact that we're going to have to build big stuff that's going to require a big amount of money if you want to hit magic numbers like that. And the myth is that local is better, as if they're synonymous. We tend to talk about local in conjunction with food all the time. And we equate that with a shorter distance between farm and fork. And there are lots of studies that show that that isn't true, even just on an environmental front, which is the argument that's been made for that. The total embedded carbon in food has much more to do with production and preparation and portions. That's right, how much you put on our freaking plate, and going to Cracker Barrel and Olive Garden and having like big old salad bars and buffets. Like those 3 things are all more important than how long it takes to get, or in what form of transportation the food takes to get from us. So that's the one, the myth of food miles. And what you see is BALLE companies, synonymous for local, actually score lower than normal companies, random companies that complete the same impact assessment. The question has nothing to do with small versus big, or scale versus no scale. The most important question we can ask is low versus high impact. That community of B corporations, those 300 B corporations, are driving systemic change because they are meeting those higher standards, those transparent standards that Mayor Sam was talking about before, which allow other people to act and to support them. And so they're the ones who are the business constituency to change corporate law. But the idea is because there's a body, because there's a set of standards that are measuring impact, not local or size, because they're measuring impact, now you can talk to investors and talk about not making a one-off investment and not arguing about whose individual investment is cooler than whose and who's got the best story and who's the more unique flower, which, quite honestly, I'm totally sick of. Is we can talk about building a new asset class. Muhammad Yunus gave 24 bucks to 42 people, or vice versa, however many years ago, and now there's an asset class called microfinance. And it's not because of a bunch of individual stories. It's because someone put a wrapper around it and framed it, and standards around it, so that it could attract the kind of capital that could lead to 3,000 or 6,000, however many there are, MFIs across the country with $30 billion worth of money going to help alleviate poverty, which then spawns the SME movement, et cetera. We need to do the same thing for sustainable business. And that doesn't happen unless you can name it and think about those one-off innovations, those individual companies, but then figure out how to look at them as a systemic solution that's creating high impact and solving and alleviating poverty and restoring the environment and building healthy communities.
This quote by Wendell Berry, it said, he's talking about the great obstacle may not be greed, but the modern hankering after glamour. A lot of our smartest, most concerned people want to come up with a big solution to a big problem. And yet, the real work of planet saving will be small, humble, and humbling, and insofar as it involves love, pleasing, and rewarding. Its jobs will be too many to count, too many to report, too many to be publicly noticed or rewarded, too small to make anyone rich or famous. BALLE was founded 8.5 years ago by some of you. And the goal was audacious, I wrote it down, to build an international network of local economies driven by independent, locally owned businesses committed to enhancing community life and healthy ecosystems. At BALLE, we believe that many of the challenges that we face today result from the perilous separation of people from the impacts of their choices. And after decades of increasingly harmful single bottom line decisions that are being made in boardrooms thousands of miles away from the people impacted, BALLE is reconnecting eaters with farmers and investors with entrepreneurs and business owners with the communities. First, ownership matters. Second, community, the context of working with peers within the context of a place matters. And third, these two together set up the right conditions for emergence and for displacement, and that's the best path to large-scale transformation. Contrary to this session's title, for instance, the idea of local living economies in no way means that you do not scale. We're doing it through going deep. So our business models are based on, like our board member at BALLE, Paul Saginaw, Zingerman's community of businesses. He started a great delicatessen some couple of decades ago. It became one of the world's best delis. People wanted it in their community. And he said he did not want to spend the rest of his life flying around to second-rate versions of his business. He did not want that kind of franchise model for his future, but he did want to grow. He wanted to develop his mind, his employees' minds. He wanted career paths. And so what he did was vertical integration with new owners. So he brought in employee partners, and they set up a creamery that supplied the deli, a bakery, a chocolate company, a farm, a nonprofit food business, a publishing company, a consulting company. They have a whole community of businesses that together has 500 employees. They have a panel of 17 owners of that company, and they do $30 million a year in sales. They've grown 10% a year in each of the last 3 years, and this is all in a town of less than 100,000 people. Look for business opportunities. Where regionally are you importing a whole lot of stuff that you're using that you could produce yourself? That's a great business opportunity. It's a great chance to diversify and build a more resilient economy with more local owners and more local businesses, and of course, some of those start to grow for export, and we have great opportunities for fair trade exchange with other communities. Businesses that are part of BALLE say things like, I had been waiting, voiceless. I had been waiting for big business, government, the guys in charge to do something about all that's wrong, and I'm so proud that we're just stepping up and making it happen. Ownership matters. Ownership equals accountability. Research shows that businesses of 20 or fewer employees that would network with other similar-sized businesses show great efficiency, resiliency, reliability, innovativeness, and positive social outcomes. We have been hardwired. Cognitive neuroscience says we've been hardwired for the small group dynamic, and we are severely limited in the amount of information we can synthesize on a large scale, and in fact, a disturbing thing happens when a group gets too large. Very soon you form committee structures, executive leadership, and most people become voiceless. They abdicate thought, they quit being involved, they simply stop participating, speaking up, initiating, deciding, acting, and the invisibility grows in proportion to the size of the organization and the group. If we don't fix how we treat each other, relearn how to be in relationship and community, we'll be rolling over life with solar-powered bulldozers and be shooting each other with wind-powered bombs, and we'll be fighting wars over lithium for the batteries instead of oil for the engines.